Welcome to Masterclass Wrestling with Class. Make sure to subscribe, like, and share. Stand with Delirium.
Produced by Victoire, the Masters of Wrestling gives a special thanks to Jesse Hernandez and the EWF, Empire Wrestling Federation, and to each of you, our loyal viewers. And now, on with the show.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Masterclass. I am one of your co-stars, the Master Emir, 1/3 of Delirium, along with the 2/3 of Delirium. Ladies and gentlemen, this is the merciless McCallion. McCallion, we took a week off. You went and did some of our bidding there, took out some of our competitors, but now we're back, and we have our special guest here this week. But before we get to that, McCallion, what would you ask our viewers to do this week?
I'm not going to ask them anything. I'm going to tell them to smash that subscribe button, and you're going to want to like this video along with all the others after you watch today's.
That's right, and you're also going to want to share this video, ladies and gentlemen, because we have got our special guest. He was a WWE superstar. He was then known as Kazarni. Ladies and gentlemen, better known today as Mr. Sinn Bodhi. Sinn, welcome.
How are you? Thanks for having me.
Very, very well. It's a pleasure to have you back here.
I'm the third.
You're the what?
Yeah, I'm the third. You said
today he's filling in for Slade. Yeah.
Second, third.
We promised the audience Slade is a masked worker here, and this is not Slade, but he's filling in. This is not Slade unmasked.
Yeah, this is our other third member.
I'm far too good looking to hide behind a mask. Where Slade, on the other hand,
we had a serious accident, so
we try not to talk about that anymore.
Yeah, we don't want to talk about it. But I tell you what, we do want to talk about.
Boiling macaroni without supervision, man, leads to wearing a mask sometimes. I think if you're a Slade.
Yeah,
we tried to convince him, but he just would not listen. So
he's got a mind of his own, that guy. So we're trying to keep him under control, but. Tell you what, we want to talk to you, Sinn, today about your action figures. We want to talk all about action figures today because obviously a lot of our fans, you grew up watching pro wrestling, big fans of the LJNs, the Jacks, the Hasbro figures. So I want to dive into that with you, Sinn. I want to ask, first and foremost, when you were growing up, what figures did you collect? Were you into figures back then?
Totally an LJN kid. I was in that sort of age bracket and that's not long after the LJNs came out, right kind of before that is when I sort of really kind of noticed wrestling, like early 80s. And as soon as I saw it, I was hooked. And I was like this little scared of his own shadow, artsy fartsy comic book little kid who I was raised, in this little ranch house, little horse ranch outside of Orangeville, Ontario, Canada. And all I had, for me, we didn't have internet or any of that stuff. We had a couple channels, and I had my comic books and we didn't have even videotapes. We had the laser disc, those big. Yeah. It looked like an album. Yeah. You just stuck the whole thing. It was literally about a foot squared album. It looked like an album. You stuffed it in the machine. Yeah. Had those, and then I somehow got Saturday and Sunday morning Maple Leaf Wrestling and a little bit of WWF and a little bit of AWA. Mm-hmm. And so that in the comic books and some of the movies that I watched 1,000 times over, like Flash, I'm a total Flash Gordon mark. Oh yeah. So I probably watched that 1,000 times. If I ever get to meet Ming Merciless, I'm never going to tell him I'm Sinn Bodhi. I'm going to be like, hey, Flash Gordon, quarterback, New York Jets.
Great score. And that was a great score, that film. Man.
Yeah, it was awesome. It was, Queen was wicked in it for sure. And there was so much awesome cheese about that movie. Yeah. And to me, the LJNs are like that. They weren't especially well done. They were just awesome cheese. They are all keys to my nostalgia. I think that's why we all kind of liked the LJNs. I'll get a lot of time, not to sound like a jerk, but I'll get a lot of time oh, your figures are better than the old LJNs. Well, maybe not, but they were the nostalgia. It was the magic of the LJNs. It wasn't that they were so well put together. I love that they were indestructibly rubber. That was cool. Yeah. Not a big articulated figure guy, but that they were just giant chew toys that you could just pistol whip each other with and play wrestling.
Yeah.
Like that was the fun part. But like their actual designs usually weren't overly brilliant. They were just. But when you're a kid, you're like, whoa, I can't believe this Macho Man, or I can't believe this Jesse the Body, or you know, whatever.
Champions. They're not born in the gym. It starts from the inside and it works its way out. Do you feel it more difficult to obtain muscle? Are you tired or perhaps depressed? Then there's a solution. Our brand new partner and sponsor, Care Aesthetics of La Quinta, are here to help you get restored to optimal health. Just use the contact information in this video and schedule your free consultation. Be sure to mention the name of the podcast, whether that be Power and Glory, Styling, Masterclass, or Hey Roma, when doing so. We wish you all the best in your road to optimized health. And now, back to the show.
I can't believe this Macho Man, or I can't believe this Jesse the Body, or you know, whatever. Art Warndorf was just gassed out of his mind, you know, like Orndorff was certainly like that. Orndorff LJN was certainly on the program, you know, like it's like holy moly. And as a kid, like again, Superman, you know, Batman, Spider-Man, all that stuff. Like I was a little comic book nerd, and so to me, wrestling was like the live action version of comic books. So I was just thoroughly hooked. And then with the toys, I'd sit there and play by myself with these toys, and then I weirdly. You know, on the odd time that I would get to go to town, like I was like some hermit, like I would get to go to town, but it would usually be on a Friday or something. You have to get that special permission slip to get on the certain bus to go with your buddy to go to their friend's house for a sleepover. And me and Edge and Christian, we all grew up together, Adam and Jay, and we would literally go to our buddy's house and we would like write cards and argue over who was going to go over and, you know, and this and that. And literally with those LJNs, we had a whole little thing where we drew all the fans around our LJN ring, and we argued. And then sometimes we liked some of the wrestlers' LJNs that we didn't like in real life, or vice versa, because some of the LJNs were crappy and some of the LJNs guys we didn't like were really cool. So we were just going off of like what the LJNs were. Yeah. Like to this day, I would laugh and I would tell Jake the Snake, I'm like, well, whose bright idea was it to put your hands up like this? Like, how are you supposed to DDT anybody like this? Like, brother, I don't fucking know. I didn't do it.
Dude, the positions they would put them in, the action poses were crazy, man. Yeah. It was just crazy.
I guess it was maybe so he could kind of hold that rubber snake or something.
Yeah, you think. Yeah.
Maybe. But like, I can't tell you how many times I've sort of like just bugged him, like just been like a little, you know, like a pest, being like, yeah, why? And he's like, brother, I don't fucking know. I didn't do it. It's marketing asshole. I didn't do it.
There was something to those imperfections. You mentioned imperfections. And back then, it was acceptable. I think nowadays, people are looking for such realism and perfection. I see you nodding there, McCallion. You know what I'm talking about.
Well, it's crazy because the cartoon, I felt like that had a cartoon value to it. And it made me like the competitors, like Sinn said, more, you know, especially when the figure was super cool. Something later in the line when Jax got a hold of the figure line, Billy Gunn's face, man, they could never get Billy Gunn's face correct. It was always like some, you know, and he had the bandana and he had the like he had bangs and everything, and I just was like, man, it would make me like Billy less because they couldn't get his face right.
I'm not sure. I heard this somewhere or saw it on some, like maybe like a toy show or just something or whatever. So I could be wrong on this, but I think especially when they were first making those kind of figures, like in the 80s and stuff, when they were the first really mass producing these things, I think way before they like rotoscoped the heads and like made the realistic heads, like they just had sculptors just trying to take their best shot. Mm-hmm. I think I could be wrong. But I think some of those companies sort of said to the said actors, like, you know, like whether it was, hey, Harrison Ford, do you want your Han Solo figure to look like you or not? If not, you won't get jack squat for royalties. But if we make it look like you, you'll get royalty, you know, that kind of stuff. So maybe that's what happened with some of them, because like they just look like cartoon versions of themselves. They don't really look like the actual guys per se. Like they're fun figures, or the Hasbros and the LJNs, but and the San Francisco toy company, like the WCW version of the little slightly smaller LJNs.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, so none of them looked like you could tell it's Ric Flair because of the blonde hair and the, you know, all the stuff, you know, and the little RF on the undies. you know, but otherwise it didn't really look like him.
Yeah.
So who knows? Maybe some of that was like a royalty thing. Maybe it was just a shitty sculpt. I don't know.
Yeah, never thought about that. That makes complete sense in a lot of cases.
Especially them trying to cut corners and make all
That's
the money. You know what I mean? It makes more logical sense for that.
Big business making big decisions. Not
Yeah.
that humans would ever do that throughout history for all the time ever.
Exactly. But then it continued, obviously, with the Hasbros. Oh, but before we got into Hasbros, so do you still have any of the original LJNs that you collected back then, Sin?
So I had not quite all of them. I had a good chunk of them, and then I had them in storage at my parents' place for the longest time. And then they moved from this country house that they had to this condo in the city when my parents lost their house for, you know, whatever, and that was a whole other thing. But so they were in this little storage unit, and then something in the underground parking like flooded, so the maintenance guys opened up all the locks for all the things so people get their stuff out. Yeah. And somehow my LJNs magically disappeared. So what monster steals a box of LJNs? But yeah, so they were long gone. Yeah. Ed still has his original ones.
Yeah.
I don't know if Christian still does. I know Adam certainly does.
Yeah.
I know he absolutely does. I'll tell you something funny, just a silly, ridiculous side note. So like, again, like those sculptors making the LJNs, I don't know that they were really wrestling fans because or some of them, because like if you look at like certain, like, you know, Tito Santana's knee pads or certain things kind of tell the tale, like wrestlers didn't wear anything like that, but they would just suppose, like if they didn't know any better, you know. And so the funniest tell for me is, this will sound so nerdy, but like this is like the shoot side of like my you know, likes and dislikes about pro wrestling. But if you look at half of those LJNs, they're doing this instead of this. And so I called Adam one day. I go, hey, I don't know how we never noticed this. I go, he's the biggest Hulk Hogan mark in the galaxy. Okay. Yeah. So I call him like, hey man, I'm going to get you in such a bad mood right now. He's like, what do you mean? I go dig through your box of LJNs and go look at your Hulk Hogan's fists. He goes, why? I go, you'll see. Yeah. I go, it'll put you in a bad mood though. Yeah. And he goes, whatever, like bullshit, you know. Calls me right back. He's like, "Whoa, they're trying to son of fucker." It sounded like Fred Flintstone cussing, like "fucker, sucker, fucker, fucker." He's like, "Stupid thumbs out." Whoever made everybody knows, like who sculpted these? Some hairstylist, you know, like, you know, whatever. It's made me laugh.
It's true though. It's even like that Hasbro Warrior figure, the one that you push down and he jumps. His legs are stuck together. He's got a belt on. He's got a green belt. Yeah, what's his belt? Where did that come from?
Well, yeah, I like being an artsy fartsy guy, trying to like I could draw you. I could just look at you for a couple seconds and go, okay. And I could pretty much realistically draw you how you are. To me, it's child's play. I don't know how anybody else can't do it. My brain just can do that. No problem. Whereas my wife and my daughter, they're musically inclined. I couldn't musically draw a straight line. I have no idea how they can remember notes on a guitar or a drum or a piano or whatever. Yeah. So I think like the artists, I'm just guessing, but I'm thinking the artists that were commissioned to make those original LJNs, they just looked at a handful of photos. They didn't really know the characters like intimately. Like I don't think they were fans to know the vibe of those characters, like who was silly, who was scary, who was this or that. I think they just took a few photos, looked at it, and then, you know, clay sculpted the thing, made a proof, and Vince McMahon probably just rushed it right through and just, yeah, it's close enough, good enough, fine, just send it to production, you know, whatever. Like they send a prototype. Yeah. And I think like, again, like if you look at some of the ones like Hercules Hernandez didn't wear that outfit more than like a handful of times, but that's the thing that they submitted. So they're like, okay, sure, why not? Yeah. Or just certain things, like again, like Tito's knee pads or the thumbs out or just dumb things like that. Or like the original Andre one, like it just, like somebody that never saw Andre, didn't know what an Andre the Giant was in real life at all. Just saw a couple quick photos. We're like, oh yeah, I'll just make this. Yeah. And so not overly an aesthetically pleasing figure. Yeah. And then weirdly, like, and like you said earlier, like, you know, things evolve and whatever, fans want to see more complex stuff. Like I made an Andre and I made him pretty, you know, I didn't make him jacked, but I made him look good. And had a
Yeah.
couple of nerds just be like, Andre was never, his physique was never that good, you know? And I'm just like, my job as a wrestler to make my opponent look good. So
Yeah.
like, fuck off.
You beefed him up on the card there. So
Yeah,
just
there
put
you
him on the
go.
show.
Gave
Like
him
I
his
made
props.
one, and again, it's just like I like sometimes I get a little bit more like a realistic vibe, sometimes a little bit more cartoony vibe. I just like how I feel about it.
Yeah.
And I made like an Andre in the suit where he's got that disco suit, you know, that little zoot suit with the light blue jacket and like the paisley shirt, you know, kind
Oh,
of
yeah.
like the rock and wrestling
Yeah.
Andre the Giant, you know, sort of like where he would like sit on Vince McMahon's little TV show and, you know, stuff like that, put his hand on Lord Alfred's face, like that kind of stuff. And I
Yeah.
made his hands, like his arms, I gave him these big gorilla hands and arms. Like I just kind of felt to artsy fartsily, I felt to kind of do that.
Yeah.
Somebody's like, no, he's way too muscular. I'm like, you're
Yeah.
missing the point, dude. Like,
Yeah.
like whoever
Exactly.
sculpted that LJN one is like made him look like just a skinny fat bag of milk. Like, I mean, who wants to play with that figure? You know, like I want to play with like Cardona stuff. I want to play with big rubber guys. This
Yeah.
doesn't sound right when you say that out loud, but
No,
you know
it
what I
does.
mean. What? He wants to what now?
That's the thing though. But it's like a timeless thing, you know, even now. Like McAllen, you've got a collection, right? You still have
Yeah.
your collection. What have
Yeah.
you got? The Jacks or the
I still have the Jacks at home, and then I dabbled into the Mattel in the beginning of it. When I first moved out to Cali to, you know, start the wrestling career, I was still collecting. So like when Nexus, it was around the Nexus time, I think is when I kind of like broke off collecting,
Yeah.
and I had a tough time. I was like taking the bus at
Yeah.
that time, you know, and going to training and everything. And I was looking for when Slater and Justin Gabriel had their first ever tag, you know, 2-pack dropped, and they had the bronze tag titles in there. And then I ended up telling Gabriel, we did a show, I think it was like last year or the year before, and I told him, I was like, man, your figure was like, it evaded me a while. And he said, hey, that was a really rare one. Like, if you still have it, he's like, that's worth some dollars now because that was the first tag title release, you know? So
Yeah.
yeah, I went pretty hard on it. I mean, definitely in the LJN and the Hasbro days, and then Jax for sure. That was the Titantron Live, all that. The R3, the real head scans when they started scanning the heads, and even that was like debatable on some of them faces, man. It would frustrate you.
Yeah, it was, but I wanted to talk about the Hasbro's for a second because those were the ones that really grabbed me. I mean, I thought they were in England, at least at the time, they were the ones that sold the most. But obviously, I don't know about here in the States because I wasn't here. So, Sin,
I liked him, but my favorite was the LJNs.
okay, but
and as soon as we started seeing those articulated figures, it was like comic books. I'm like, I can't collect this anymore. I can't start collecting this. I'm going to spend a fortune on this stuff. So I kind of just removed myself from it. Like,
so you bowed out around the Hasbro time, about the early 90s and that. But in terms of the buzz, though, do you think the Hasbros were the most popular, or would you say the LJN still surpassed that?
I think it almost mirrors real life. Like somehow those wrestlers from the 80s are practically like household names. Like my grandma never watched wrestling a day in her life, but she knew who Hulk Hogan or Jake the Snake or Roddy Piper were.
Yeah.
But yet the numbers are apparently so much bigger with the modern day product. Like the reach is bigger. The companies it's $1 billion company now, you know, so I would have to think they probably made a bajillion dollars more with the articulated figures than they do with the LJNs. But the LJNs are just like the classics. Like, you know, like you can have, you know, like no disrespect to the new guys whatsoever. I just mean like Seth Rollins is awesome. AJ Styles is awesome. All these guys are awesome. But, you know, Macho Man and Jake the Snake and Roddy Piper and, you know, and Hogan and Steamboat and all these guys are just the creatures of myth. Like they're just the wrestling gods, you know, some of them are still here, some of them aren't. But, you know, but those are like, they're just held in such an esteem where I think for figures, maybe just like to check the nostalgia box, like the magical box, then the LJNs have it. But money wise as a business, I have no doubt the articulated figures have just, you know, bajillion dollars more than the LJNs ever made.
Yeah, it's interesting that you brought that up because I hear that so much now that the wrestling business is making so much more now than back then. It always baffles my mind because, like you said, you know, McAllen, we talk about this. you can't get away from Macho Man, Ultimate Warrior, Undertaker, all these.
You know what's funny is you don't know too production wise. You know that they're producing way more now, and they have the capabilities of producing way more now than but then back then you
Yeah.
had people doing a lot of stuff by hand. Now it's so much machinery, and then also something that you don't get away from, like you said, is guys like Macho Man, Hulk Hogan. These guys are still being brought out in the Mattel line of action figures. Their shirts are still available on WWE Shop. Like these guys, like you said, they were the myth gods of wrestling. And although we don't really have too much of that nowadays of what they were able to do for mainstream media, they're still using those images because they were so household name worthy.
Yeah.
Well, and two, I think like when you put those characters like you smash them together in a video game with the modern day guys, it's just more characters to market, And then also, I think weirdly, in just the weirdest of ways, marketing weird ways, like when you have a video game and you have, Macho Man or Hulk Hogan or whatever, and then you can have them against Seth Rollins or The Miz or whatever. You're like, oh, okay, sure, why not? Like it almost validates the new guys, seeing them, even if it's in a silly video game, going toe to toe with Andre the Giant or Roddy Piper, or whatever. You're like, all right, The Miz is awesome then, or John Cena's awesome.
It gives them that fantasy warfare ability that they can do on their own, like fantasy booking.
Yeah.
And again, and it speaks to the bottom line of that company. It's a company running a business, selling products, and those products aren't just action figures. Those products are wrestling matches, video games, just on and on and on and on. Whatever else they're making, So it's just but really, just a business trying to make a profit with the best product that they could figure out to make. And I think the old school wrestling, from the golden eras, whatever you want to call them, I think it was just like, if it wasn't broke, don't fix it. So we'll keep on including the Macho Mans and the Pipers and the Steamboats and the Hulks and the Andres into the video games and the toy lines and whatever. And in a cool way, non-business way, maybe just serendipitously, it kind of keeps those characters alive, like.
Oh, for sure.
Like I've heard a lot of people say, "Oh, the first time I saw Jake the Snake was when he cut a promo on Cody Rhodes on AEW. He's a scary old manager guy. Like he was so scary or whatever." Like, go down a rabbit hole and go watch him and Ricky Steamboat, or him and Sting or Macho Man or Ronnie Garvin or whoever, and you'll see a whole different thing. And I did that same thing when I was a kid. When I saw Freddie Blassie with Iron Sheik and Nikolai Volkov, I'm like, who's this sparkly suit wearing like a-hole who's just so mean and gruff or whatever, and like, what's he doing and whatever. He was just a manager. I was a kid, and that's what I saw. I didn't know he was the scourge of Japan, and he was like the first wrestling vampire that had his teeth filed and all these. He scared the shit out of the Japanese wrestling audience, stuff like that. And he was a big LA villain and all these. I didn't know that until I knew it. Like, so how do people know about these things? How do you know what a Macho Man is until you've experienced a bit of the freak out, brother?
A bit of the madness.
Right. How do you know until you know?
Cream of the crop.
Yeah. Let's say, with a little cup of coffee when he says that. Yeah.
But with them integrating into video games or the Mattel figures or whatever, the Elite this or fancy that, whatever, I'm surprised that they don't do. And I know what you guys are going to say. They half-assed it already one time, but I'm surprised they don't make a modern day line of LJNs. And again, I know they made kind of like a
They're still sitting on Walmart shelves.
Mysterio and Trish and Hardy's. But
didn't AEW also do some? They tried some.
They did a couple, which I thought was a great idea. Like, that was a great idea.
Yeah.
But
well, they've also tried to revisit the Hasbros. A few years ago, WWE brought out the Hasbro style. Yeah, they brought out the Hasbro.
That's the ones they're still sitting on shelves at Walmart. They had who'd they have? Bray Wyatt. They had Papa Shango.
Warrior.
Stone Cold Warrior. Yeah.
Yeah, they brought him back out. Obviously nothing like the Hasbros. I mean, even Sinn, even to pick up the packaging, because I saw the Warrior one there and I picked it up, and even the cardboard was weaker. It was flimsy. It wasn't the same as the Hasbro. When you
that's a comment on modern day society, right?
Yeah. Well, yeah, exactly. Yeah,
it's all weaker and flimsier now.
Yeah.
I love hearing like old school guys like Dr. Tom and different old school guys be like, back in my day when it was real, or Dusty Rhodes would say that, all that kind of stuff. It just made me laugh. But anyway, just being silly. But whoever's listening, if they got offended by that, don't get your Don't get your spandex in a twist. I was just joking.
But hey,
if you like your thick cardboard, okay, you can get out of here, out
That's
of this
right.
podcast.
That's right.
exactly. Yeah. No, but
And
it was tougher.
take your flimsy cardboard.
Yeah, take your flimsy cardboard and your knockoff versions, whatever, and whatever.
Well,
But
I think like when they make the when they made those, the Undertaker and Eddie Guerrero and Trish and Hardy's and Ray, I mean, Cena, I think, I don't know if I'm missing anybody else, but like they were just slightly smaller to be too small.
yeah,
Kind of like the San Francisco Toy Company ones. Like it sucked that Vader or Kevin Sullivan or Flair or whatever couldn't play with them next to the LJNs because they just look like midgets. So you kind of end up jobbing them out because they just look like little schmucky guys, But,
that's
like
true.
if they just didn't pinch a couple of pennies, just make them the right size, make them like if you're going to make them LJN style, like then do that.
Yeah. Well, it was like that. It was like that Yokozuna one, the Hasbro Yokozuna. That was very real. Remember how huge that was? McAllen, do you ever see that one?
Yeah.
I don't know if I'd have to look at it and then it was not ringing a bell.
But Sin, you remember that one, right? Yeah, that one was really well done. Like the Doink the Clown, the Doink.
I remember Doinks. Yeah, Doinks was great.
Yeah, very, very well done. So let's jump in, Sin, to your journey into manufacturing your own action figures. So when did this passion begin? When did you first create your first figure?
So many years ago, I was doing okay. I was doing a lot of wrestling. I was doing a lot of tattoos and stuff. So I was saving up a few bucks, and I thought, you know what? I'm going to treat myself. I'm going to go eBay hog wild, and I'm going to go buy back some LJNs and restore the collection that I got stolen.
Yeah.
And weirdly, so this is like a hiccup that has nothing to do with it, but so like I had a bunch of Hasbros still too, with all of the stuff that I had recollected over the years. And as my wife and I moved from Las Vegas to Death Valley, I thought I'd be clever and be like, well, all these toys that I've made already, I'll just I'm going to get a bunch of wrestling students to help me move. And, they're going to be like clumsy circus lions. So I don't want them to break these figures because they're made out of resin and not rubber. So I'm like, I'm so smart. I'll just take them up a few days ahead of time. And I left them in my living room. And there's people working on the house, like working on the roof and interior and doing some stuff before I moved in. And my back door, the lock was goofy on it. Mm-hmm. And so like you wouldn't know that unless you worked on the house. And so left the stuff up there, didn't think anything of it, came back a couple of days later. And my wife's like, where'd you put your little toys? Mm-hmm. And I'm like, what do you mean? And somebody came in and stole my whole fucking collection of all the stuff all the ones that I made.
Sheesh.
Like everything that I made, all the LJNs that I recollected. And here's a second skip before I get back to the first thing. Yeah. So right when the pandemic hit, I know we talked off camera, not to talk about the stuff we're not supposed to talk about, but I'm not going to talk about that. But just saying,
right.
At the beginning of the pandemic, my spidey sense said 2 weeks to flatten the curve, my ass. So I thought, whatever's happening right now, I want to be as liquid as possible. What can I sort of lighten the load with? What can I jettison for some quick cash? And so I had the entire LJN set, and I had the entire. Not quite the entire Hasbro set, but I had all of it.
Damn.
And so I sold it for $4,000, of everything from Sergeant Slaughter to like all the stuff. And I had so many people come online when I said that I was selling. They're like, "Don't do it, dude!" Like they were, no, they were so upset, which made me. It felt like it was nice, And then so in the pandemic. So to rewind that. So now having said all that, so in the pandemic, when they said like 2 weeks to flatten the curve, I just thought, yeah, bullshit. So I needed something to preoccupy my brain with. And years before, when I had collected those, when I went on eBay and just went buck wild on eBay collecting this stuff, in some of those little lots that you would get, I got doubles and triples of stuff and kind of beatery ones of stuff. And I thought, I saw a couple people gimmick them up into other things, and I really didn't follow that, but I'm like, oh, well, it looks interesting. Maybe I could take a couple of these duplicates or triplicates that are all kind of janky and play with them. And I dabbled in it for a second, but then my wrestling schedule was just so crazy that I just left it for this was like probably I don't know, 5, 6, 7, 8 years that just sat in a box, you know, aside from the ones I had on my shelf or whatever. And then so in the pandemic, I'm like, you know what, I'm gonna jump into those old boxes and see what I can do and see if I can make these. And so I just started just sort of trial and error and DIY, you know, just kind of figuring out stuff with like how to chop off this and add that and do this and do that and make this and epoxy this and epoxy that and whatever. And slowly I post them online, and then people would be like, hey, that's really neat. Could I buy that? And I'm thinking, you know, again, the rule breaker, the overlords of planet Earth weren't letting us wrestle or anything, you know, during the pandemic. We were all rats in cages. So I thought, not making money wrestling right now. Yeah, maybe this could be a little hobby turned side hustle. Like I didn't think about it like that, but people just started saying, could I buy it? Could I buy it? Could I buy it? So I said, yes, you can. Yeah. And I just kind of kept on learning, and just like in wrestling or I guess in anything, you just, as you go, you learn and you figure out new tricks, new, better ways to do things. And so I kind of went from just chop shopping these rubber wrestlers into, I first learned how to cast and mold, like and enlarge like those Hasbro heads, because they're too small to put on an LJN. But like, you know, when you're a kid and you have the you know, you put the little dinosaur or a little worm in like the cup of water and it expands. Yeah. Well, it's like a chemical reaction. And so I learned how to use the right chemicals to, so you would mold like a size as, like say like a Macho Man Hasbro head. Yeah. And then I would take the rubber from that mold and you throw it into this gunk that would expand the mold. And when you kind of guesstimate how big you need the mold, then you would re-pour that mold, and then you'd have a new head, and then you would just cast and mold that head, and then that would be your. So it was a lot of work, and it was a lot of weird materials, but I mean, it just kept me busy again. Yeah. The pandemic, and so I learned how to do that first, and then I learned how to cast and mold like a whole character in rubber, like you encase them in clay, and then you do the two halves of the rubber, like a urethane. Like a mold and all this stuff. Yeah. And then just kept on getting a little bit more clever, learning some do's and don'ts. And then I dabbled in the 3D printing, and then I started kind of making the 3D bodies. Okay. And then I found other guys that were pretty good at sculpting the heads. And then I just kind of started doing all of it. Like I just learning trial and error. Like I can draw. I just had to figure out how to get what was in my brain into the 3D sculpting programs. Yeah. So once I figured that out, that was like how to draw with my brain on the computer. That was sort of a game changer for me. Yeah. Is it an expensive process, Sinn, to be able to create the figure? Yeah, but yes and no. To make a rubber cast and mold of a figure, like I think we all are like rubber marks for like the LJN style, but like what I make is usually like resin, which is. And I make them hollow resin, so they don't weigh 10 pounds, you know. But if you drop it, it'll break. You know, it's not like an action figure that might sustain a swan dive off of your desk or something like that. Yeah. But I learned how to kind of print in like that flexi resin, and if you print them solid in flexi resin, they're not as rubbery as like an LJN, but they're more like the LJN Sergeant Slaughter or like those San Francisco Toy Company ones where they're kind of solid rubber. Got it. So it's got more of an LJN, sort of way more of a feel than the resin. But I think the resin actually, like the solid resin, somehow the details keep a little bit better. And the solid rubber, like the flexi resin, is way more expensive. Like it's brutal. It's harder to deal with. It's harder to work with, and it's way more expensive. So like I do it. I'll make it for people, you know, here and there, and I'll even try to downsell it. Like instead of upselling a customer that wants to figure, like I'll downsell them. Like, yeah, I can make rubber, but the hollow resin is way more cost effective, and it'll happen way quicker. Whatever. Some people are like, okay. Somebody like, no, I want the rubber. I'm like, God, I'm like, okay. Like if the rubber was easier to work with and cheaper, I would be all over it. I would love it because I want it to be rubber too. But yeah, just learning all that stuff. Like so, if to actually make like a rubber one and not like flexi resin, like I would say it's cost effective if you're going to make a whole bunch of them. But I just usually make one-offs. Yeah. So if I make a one-off and somebody wants one or two or whatever, or if I, you know, over the course of years, if I sell one or two or three or four or five, then just 3D printing them. Like once I've designed it, once I print it, I can just print it again. So that's sort of a quicker process, and it's clean. There's no blemishes in it. Like, it looks like what the first one would look like. But if you were going to make, like, if you said, hey, could you make me 5 Emirs? I say, yeah, I would print them. But if you wanted 1,000 of them, I would say, well, let's print let's print the prototype, and let's cast and mold the other 100, 500,000, whatever is rubber.
Amir does want 1,000 Amirs. He does.
Well, no,
he
not
said
just
that. His eyes kind of
Yes.
like, oh, I could have 1,000.
I can have 1,000.
Well,
Watch
I
it.
would do that. I would do that for like Jake the Snake or Ric Flair and some guys like that. But I mean, those guys are at conventions all the time. And like, I've seen Jake sit down at a convention for an hour and walk away with 10 grand. Like, he can just move merchandise, and he's just like, he just gets tired. Like, he's older. He just gets tired. He's like, all right, brother, that's it. Let's go. Like,
I maxed out cash today.
Like, whatever. Like, I don't care. I'm tired.
I'm done.
Let's go get some sushi, brother. I'm like, okay.
What about now? There's a couple of things that came to mind as you were talking. Now, you mentioned toys earlier and your wife in the same sentence. So I must ask, because all three of us have wives. So how does your wife receive your interest in these action figures?
I think she just thought, hey, if it was keeping my head sane while we were trapped in our home during the pandemic, like, sure. And then as soon as she saw me make a few bucks at it, she was like, well, that's cool. You're good at it. So, like, why not?
Yeah.
She was a wrestling fan growing up. So,
okay,
why not?
Yeah. So she's into it too.
And I mean, I would like to say I'm pretty suave with my action figure play around my wife. I'm not like, look, honey, look at this guy. He's got this action arm grip where, like, I'm pretty Brad Pitt, Tom Cruise, Johnny Depp about my LJN play in front of my wife, So
yeah, that's really cool. That's really cool, man.
So I think she loves me for me, I suppose. I hope, I guess.
Yeah. No, it's interesting. It's interesting, Sinn, because my wife proposed to me the other day to do a show with wrestlers' wives. And I said, you know what? That's a good idea, to see how the other side perceives our interest.
Housewives of kayfabe.
Yeah, exactly. So see who loves it, who hates it, and how they manage with it, and all this good stuff, which I do think will be interesting. So fans keep watching it.
I will say, in all seriousness, like, whether it's wrestling or the action figures or just whatever, my wife has always been very supportive. She can be a ball buster, like any good wife, I suppose, but she has always been supportive. And I've been around the block long enough to know, like, if you're dating or you're with somebody that is your opponent and not your tag partner, probably it's a bad booking.
Yeah.
So, like, you gotta go.
Yeah. No, I agree 100%.
You heard it here, guys. Sinn said, drop the garbage, drop the dead weight. If they're not tagging you in, you're not getting that hot tag.
Yeah.
Get out while you
Get
still
out.
can.
Champion.
It's going to be a heel turn for
They're
sure.
not born in the gym.
As a coach,
It starts
as a
from
player
the inside,
coach, as a wrestler,
it works its way out.
I see so
Do you feel it
many
more
guys and
difficult
girls that
to
have
obtain
so
muscle?
much talent,
You tired,
and then they would kind
perhaps
of
depressed.
block their dreams
There's a
because
solution.
the girl they were dating
Our
thought
brand
wrestling
new
was silly
partner
or didn't
and
like it or was
sponsor,
like worried about
Care
getting
Aesthetics
hurt or
of
whatever. To me,
Akinta,
that's just
are
code
here
for
to help you
I'm going to kill this
get
person's dreams just to keep them
restored
close because they're
optimal
the
health.
coolest thing I'm going to get my
Just
hands
use
on.
the contact
So I just
information in
wanna
this
kind
video
of
and
stalemate them
schedule
so I
your
can just keep this
free
cool version of them,
consultation.
and then that's that.
Be sure to
like, if they
mention
date
the
somebody, it's
name
cool
of the
for a minute,
podcast,
but as soon as
whether
they
that
travel to do
be
anything
Power and Glory,
where that person has to think,
Styling,
well, what's that person up to or
Masterclass,
whatever,
or Hey
so their
Roma
insecurities
when doing
or
so.
their,
We
maliciousness
wish you
kinda
all the
kicks
best
in. So
in your
you got a
road to
girlfriend, boyfriend,
optimized
husband,
health.
wife, or whatever that is
And
not
now,
down to
back
support
to
your
the show.
dreams.
Yep. You heard it there. You heard it there first, and I agree. And it goes both ways too. If it's the guy doing it to the girl,
For sure.
as a husband, you support your wife. If she's
For sure.
interested in whatever, knitting, painting, gardening, whatever, you support that.
OnlyFans. What the world has changed a lot now.
No,
we have a bunch of
Callie.
other options out there.
You know what? It's funny that you even say that. Like, so, like, my weird clause on something like that would be like, if you dated somebody that was already doing something a little risque, then you either better be accepting of it or move along.
That's it.
That's it. Don't try to reel them in and then tell them, oh, you can't do that. I mean, that's what a lot of guys or girls will do to budding wrestlers, guy or girl.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, this is cool that I bagged a wrestler, guy or girl. It'll be cool for a minute, and then, hey, I need you to get a real job. Hey, I don't want you to get hurt. Hey, I don't want you to travel. Hey, I want you close.
Mm-hmm.
That's the exact same thing. So, like, I wouldn't have any problems dating or marrying, like I'm just being hypothetical, but like if I had met a stripper and I was just like, we're in love, let's get married, then I would have to be comfortable with her always being a stripper, or until she decided not to be. But
But you got into it already knowing she was, so it's something
right,
that you accepted from the beginning. It's
Yeah.
a different
right,
story, yeah.
Yeah.
right. So if I dated her and she was a stripper, I'm like, yeah, okay, let's get married. As soon as we got married, I'm like, you're not allowed to do that anymore. That's garbage. That's
Yeah.
like being a tyrant, you know.
Right. Right.
Like after my so Karen is my wife numero dos.
Okay.
She's my keeper. I'm keeping her forever. I got her foreversies, and that's that. But the girl I dated right after my practice wife, uh, she was a really nice business lady, and she's clever. You know, she was funny, sexy, smart, all that stuff. But I didn't take off time for wrestling, but I didn't do a whole lot of wrestling within this few months that a couple months that we were dating, whatever it was, just for whatever reason. I was doing a lot of tattooing and stuff. And so I invited her to see this show. And so she's like, okay, that sounds cute, whatever, that's neat, you know. So her business lady-ish brain goes to this, you know, this indie wrestling show. And I'm wrestling a dude and we're going through tables and there's, you know, chairs and I don't remember what, but all sort of thumbtacks and crazy stuff. And she sees me all dolled up in person for the first time with all of my Sinn Bodhi nonsense, you know. And I was wrestling a dude there was two dudes. We were in like a three-way, I want to say. There was like one dude was 7 feet tall and the other dude was like 450 pounds.
Yeah.
And I'm getting clobbered, but I was the one directing traffic. Like they were my students, or like whatever you want to call it. Like they were my guys, you know?
Yeah.
And so they're clobbering me. I remember I got the one dude, the big 7-foot dude, like chopped me in the face by accident. He just wound up to overhand me, and he just misgauged. His eyesight wasn't that great. Just boom.
Oof.
And he's like, "Sorry, boss." I'm like, "Just keep hitting me, you fucking asshole," you know. And long story short, like I put myself through all this stuff. Another day at the office, no big deal. But after the show, she's just like, "You can't do that. Oh my God, I was so worried. We can't like." I can't go through this or whatever. I'm like, I literally almost like was like the condescending, like, don't you know who I am? Like, don't you know what you're dating? You know, like, don't you know that I'm Sinn Bodhi? You know, like I'm the warlord of weird toots. Like, you need to get with the thumbtacks and the tables if you want to. You're never going to get this, you know? And she squawked a bit. So I powdered and she never got this. So that was that.
Yeah, there you go.
She was a nice lady, but she just was not prepared to date a silly pro wrestler. So
I think
it would have been convenient to, you know, she was a nice lady, whatever, would have been easy just to keep her around, and then easy to sort of cock block your own stuff to shut somebody up. But can't do that. You know, you got to follow your own dreams. And sometimes, you know, what's that whole adage of you got to crack a few eggs to make an omelet. So.
Well, no, I agree with you, because there's nothing worse than waking up in, you know, when time has passed and it's too late, and looking back and saying, well, you know, I could have, because time is short. As we all know, time is moving so fast. I didn't realize at this point how fast life moves. It's crazy how fast it goes.
Yeah, I feel like it's the older you get too, the quicker you're, because now I'm just rolling downhill. That's the issue.
I think also too, the older you get, the more your bullshit meter kind of goes down, and less you want to put up with. Like, I'm a nice guy. I like to be nice. I enjoy to be nice. I really prefer for people around me to be comfortable. I don't want anybody tippy-toeing around me, go, oh, is he going to get upset if I look the wrong way or do this or that? I want to be easygoing, you know? So, but at the same time, like, you see bullshit and you want to put up with less. I'm not mean about it. I just, in my life, I'll discard it. I don't need to eat shit or put up with shit. And there you go.
If only we
and my wife just walked into the kitchen. Okay. So we were talking about you while you were out of the room. They asked, what do you think about me making toys? Like, do you think I'm a big nerd for playing with toys, or what? Pretty big nerd. She says she's a pretty big nerd.
Oh, there you go. So you're both.
Is that all you got? You want to bury me on the internet and tell me what a toy loving nerd I am?
So, but actually, Sinn, take a moment, grab one of your figures. I want to show it up close if you can.
Sure.
Show some of your work there. So this is the crescendo of this episode. I want to see these action figures here. So there you go, McCallion. Words of pearls of wisdom from Sinn Bodhi today.
So
Oh
there's
wow.
my Iron Sheik with his
Sheik.
Persian clubs. Al
Yeah.
Snow worked out with those all the time. He's a big, strong guy now because of the Persian clubs
Yeah.
and his fancy diet.
It's very lifelike. I like the
Yeah.
gut because his stomach stick out with the abs on it.
Yep. With the abs. Yeah.
Yeah, I try to
Very,
accentuate what I don't want to just have like just a generic jacked up wrestler. I want their, attributes to sort of feel like the guy,
Yeah.
whether it's more cartoony or more realistic or what have you, and
yeah.
so forth.
Very, very nice. Very, very
Well,
nice.
that was to touch note on that. That was something that later on with wrestling figures became very annoying. Was that they would only make 3 to 5 body scans,
Yeah.
and everyone would share those scans. So they're okay. We got the guy with abs, we got the guy with partial abs, we got the real tall guy, and we got the real big fat guy, and that's it. Like, and then we had the female body, and then for the beginning, everyone shared the female body. I think that was I want to say Jax, and then in the beginning of Mattel, and I don't know
Again,
nowadays.
they're pinching pennies. They're saving
That's
a few
it.
bucks, but
That's it. They're
it
like,
takes
hey,
away
they're
from
wrestlers, you know.
Yep. 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 Who's that one you got there, Sin?
this is a really cartoon. This is one of my most cartoony ones.
Oh, Damien.
Damien Demento.
Oh, Damien Demento.
So
Yeah.
he's like,
That's cool. I like
That
that.
is cool.
I just
Yeah.
felt like he should be sort of otherworldly, almost like something that's taking on the Guardians of the Galaxy or something. Like
Yeah,
I just
yeah.
kind of
No,
felt
that's definitely a great take on it.
Man, they could have done so much with him. Looking at that figure, they could have
Yeah.
done so much more with Damien Demento.
when I was I have a Sarni one. Here's a Jake the Snake one.
Oh yeah. Oh wow. That's a really cool one there. Wow.
So um, so I made this only because a fan asked me to make one for him, and then I marked out and I made one for myself just because I already made it for this other dude.
Yeah.
But when I was there at SmackDown, I can't remember what his name was, but he was like the head of like the toy stuff, and we were talking about getting ready to make an action line of a figure line of Kazarni,
Mhm.
and he laughed. He said, like, most of the dudes these days, like, you can't tell them apart unless you read the name on the label, because most of them have the short hair and the trunks and the knee pads and kick pads or just the regular boots or whatever.
Yeah.
He was just like, you are going to be a pain in the ass to make, but you're going to be a really awesome figure. Like, you have so much details we have to get right.
Yeah.
But it will stand out like a sore thumb. So I'm like,
Yeah.
I'll take that. And then 2 seconds later, I was canned, and then they canned the figure line, so I don't get any royalties because they didn't make the figure. But I think there's a figure design somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
So challenging maybe Detective Matt Cardona to see if he can.
Did they
super
scan your
smooth, but there
head?
was a
Did you
project.
go into
Yeah.
the 360
Yeah.
thing where they okay, got you. That's cool.
Wow, that's very cool. Now, Sin, did you have a hand in designing your gear at that time for Kazarni?
I chose to look like that. I designed everything. I made everything. It was Vince's idea to call me Kazarni, and because he liked the whole carnival thing and the circus thing.
Mm-hmm.
And so but I was Sinn Bodhi and looked like that in FCW in Florida Championship Wrestling. And when I had my sit down with Vince, we talked about carnival stuff, and like I think a few different people said that Vince was kind of fascinated with the old carnival stuff, like how wrestling started there. Thought that was neat.
Yeah.
So I kind of said carnival in my speak. I would usually say like freak show or sideshow or circus even.
Mm-hmm.
I said carnival just because wrestling and the carnival, and that's what I was told he liked. So I just sort of verbalized it like that. And then so he came up with Kazarni. He was like, it's Carney for Carney. You get it? I'm like, yeah, I get it.
No, it was.
Go ahead, sorry.
No, I was going to say it was great this morning before I knew we were doing this show. I was thinking about those original vignettes that you shot, and I was thinking how much time and money must have gone into that, because you were in a full circus, right? From what I remember.
I was told those videos cost like over $30K.
Wow.
I don't know if that had anything to do
for
with
those,
like,
man. I was so pumped for that I wanted them to give you like a really big, I mean, because those vignettes were great.
Yeah.
Like
Oh,
vignettes,
thank you.
we've talked on other episodes, and I mean, as wrestlers, we know when you're trying to push someone from the start, like Carlito, like Kofi Kingston, like Chris Masters, you make them a star right out the gate to the wide audience that doesn't watch the developmental, that doesn't get the chance to go down there, and it's just boom, who is this guy? And now
Yeah.
you know, instead of just he debuts in a weaker fight. So you had such a good build-up. They just
Yeah.
didn't. Yeah.
So I think like the only thing I was thoroughly appreciative of everything that WWE and Vince did, give me that opportunity. The thing that I wasn't a fan of was like I didn't really have any leg to stand on about the name or whatever because I didn't have any equity in that company yet. I was brand new at that company, so I think it would have been in poor form for me to sort of pipe up and squawk about it or whatever. I was always taught my basic coach was Ron Hutchinson, and he always taught us do what you're told, be a good soldier. So I thought, okay, I'm just going to do my best to get this over. So I just thought like, some kind of different incarnation of that name, like Kiz Bodhi or something like that, or something. But I just thought Kizarni. It just didn't feel right.
Mhm.
And I didn't mind speaking Carney, but like when Dusty Rhodes was producing me in Florida, he would let me cut my own promo. And then I would be this sort of somber, eccentric guy. And then I would outro with some nonsensical Carney. So whether you understood it or not, didn't make a difference. Then if you didn't get it, it would almost be better. So like, what is he talking about?
Yeah.
Like if I'm like, Amir, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that, and I'm going to pull your eyes out and stick them in your ears and do all this, blah, 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 blah. And then I would outro with like, Sizzally, Sizzled, Sizzy, Sizzles by the Sizzy, Sizzor. So if you get it, you get it. If you don't get it,
Right. Yeah,
no
that's
problem.
cool.
Yeah.
But I said it like speaking like this, basically in this tone.
Yeah.
And my biggest thing that I wasn't a fan of with the vignettes was the director there had like specific directions from Vince saying this guy is going to be super duper babyface, super super babyface. So the director was like, "You sound too scary. You have to like up your heighten your octave or whatever."
Mm-hmm.
So next thing you know, like I'm Kazarni. That's too scary. I'm Kazarni. That's too scary. I'm Kazarni. I'm Kazarni. Like I sounded like that, the comic book nerd from The Simpsons, And what Vince told me was just like, go film at your buddy's circus show, Ward Hall, World of Wonders. Rest is in peace, Ward. And just go film a bunch of stuff that you do, crazy stuff that you do, and we'll sort it out. We'll chop it up and we'll make vignettes out of it. Okay. So 90%, 95% of the stuff that I did, Vince was like, we can't air this. It's too fucking crazy. Like, you're going to scare the shit out of these kids. Like, and so most of the vignettes, if you notice, I'm like, hey, I'm Kazarni. And it cuts to some other guy or girl doing some kind of more cuter and less scary, like a neat sideshow feat, but certainly not a scary sideshow feat per se, compared to like the crazy shit that I was doing. So I'm like, well, you told me to do what I do. That's what I do, Yeah. And so I don't think like if I was coming in as a heel and I was letting the other people do my, heavy lifting for me, like the sword swallower girl or the guy swinging a bowling ball by his ears or the midget fire eating or whatever else, then I can make them do all the work, be like, look how cool I am. But that's not such a good look on a baby face for me to, hey, look at these cool guys doing something. I'm Kazarni.
Right.
Like it was kind of like, I didn't, that sort of was the thing. And speaking of Carney, I thought like, if I just spoke straight out Carney, nobody's going to get it. It's going to be irritating. And that's not what you need from a babyface.
Yeah.
Heel, sure. But Vince was like, set, you're going to be a babyface.
Strange. Like, I don't know about you, McCallion. When I saw those vignettes, if I was just to watch it without any sound, I think total heel. That's it. I wouldn't have thought
it just was the look of Sinn back then, because I had seen you were down in development, because I'd always keep tabs on who was down there and who would look like. I remember when Eric Rowan was down there, when Big E was down there, Big E Langston. You just knew these guys were going to hit, and you were like, dude, they're going to make an impact, because something you just said, there was a lot of guys that just had the regular short haircut. They just wore trunks. They all looked cookie cutter. You don't know what they could do, because I don't know if they knew what they could do. But at least you guys, there was a group of guys down there that you could tell what they were before you ever laid eyes on them. So you were one of them. And then when that showed up, it was like, this guy's going to be a face, like it was confusing.
Yeah, definitely was confusing.
I think when I had that match against MVP, Like it was like the third hour of like a 4 hour double taping, triple tape, whatever it was. And it was such a confusing scenario that like I think like it was at the Izod Center in Jersey, which I guess is predominantly a heel crowd. So I think the confusion of maybe is this guy a heel was like that was on my side, but like Johnny Ace, John Laurinaitis was the agent for my match, and like no disrespect to him, but I'm just like everything he told me, I'm like, yes, sir. Yes, sir. Had a good attitude. I'd never boo-boo faced a thing in my life. You know, that's not how I roll. But he's telling me, so it's like, I know how to get you over. You don't want you to do this, 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 this. I'm like, okay. I mean, I don't usually do that stuff, but if you're signing the checks, okay, you know, sure, whatever you want. But I remember like the match itself was fine. It was an okay match. It was no problem. It was not the match that we needed for a debut. And I was sort of like, I didn't fucking call this match. This is not my match. This is an MVP's match. And like, I come out looking like a heel, supposed to be a baby against a heel who's getting babyface sympathy in MVP because he's on a losing streak. So people are starting to kind of have empathy for him. So it was just all sorts of shades of confusion. And then I've got this 10-minute match where I'm underneath and like holds half the time. And I literally, like, you know, as you know, like the referee is on the horn, like, so Vince or whoever's on the thing, you know, doling out what they want. And I was coming out of the second hold, and the ref was like, Johnny wants you back down on a hold. And I'm like, la, 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 I can't hear you. And I'm fighting my way out of this hold, and I peel off to do a spot. I'm like, we got to get moving. I can't sit here like this, you know?
Yeah.
And it was just such a weird thing. Like I was not allowed to tap into any instincts there. Like it was so weird. Like I think like Hollywood and wrestling are the exact opposite. And that day it felt like Hollywood, whereas like it was just like I was ill cast, you know, like even though I'm a circus guy, it was like this is not what this is supposed to be. Like if you go watch me at FCW, or if you go watch some of my matches on like YouTube or something, like especially like this version of me, like that's me. I just chose to look like that, but how I work is me. Like whatever I'm wearing, that's just aesthetics. But like how I think, how I put my psychology on a match, how I do this, that, and the other, that is me. And what they were asking me to do, well, it just wasn't me. Like speaking in that high voice and speaking all that Carney gibberish. Like I can speak Carney. I'm an old school guy. I can do that. But like, all the moves he asked me to do, I did. It just didn't feel right. And like what was different about that, and like the 1,000 times I wrestled MVP on live events after that, was night and day different. And it was so fun. Like I had so much fun wrestling MVP. He is such a good dude, strong, fucking heavy, awesome, believable heel. I was the baby face. We would get those crowds every time in whatever city. And we were never like the curtain jerk match. We weren't the dark match. We were always stuffed somewhere in the middle of like this card full of Triple H, Big Show, Undertaker, you know, Edge and Christian, Hardy Boys, like all these star people. And here I am, and I would wrestle either MVP, maybe Chavo, or Brian Myers, or, you know, Eric Escobar or something. Mostly MVP. And by the end of it, the people were like, hey, we're happy. You know, this was fun.
Yeah. Well, you're an artist. You mentioned there Hollywood and wrestling, and it is. They do mix.
Sorry. I didn't. I brain farted and didn't tell you that. So like in Hollywood, you think of some character, you go, okay, I Spielberg and I wrote Darth Vader. Now I have to cast the perfect actor for Darth Vader. I think in wrestling, it is exactly opposite. We're like, hey, I have this athlete, this performer, this wrestler. I need a character that will perfectly saddle onto this human. So I think, like, you know, in some ways, Sinn Bodhi and Kazarni is definitely part of me. It's me, but the way they saddled me up for it, I just didn't feel. And I'm not making any excuses. I'm not throwing shade at anybody. I was thoroughly excited for the opportunity, and it's my fault that I couldn't figure out how to get that character over to the point of not keeping my job. You know, like so. But I mean, all the wrestlers I worked were happy. The producers that produced me were happy. The fans that watched me wrestle were happy. I think I was undone by, you know, like business in the back that I had no clue about, way above my pay grade. And I will never know so I won't have closure on it, even though I've been back many times coaching and whatever. still have no clue why I got the release, but.
Well, you still made an impact, and you're still making an impact. And then also you were in TNA. You did the New Church, right? So you were in TNA.
I did that before Kizarny. And here, then the funny thing is, I'll have people go, "Oh, I really like those vignettes," or "I really fucking hated those vignettes." Either way, if you remember my cup of coffee, like there's guys that have been there for a year or two, and you like have no recollection of them.
Right.
If you saw my cup of coffee and like, well, at least I did something to make you remember, you know?
Yep. Oh, for sure. Yeah, McCallion and I talk about this quite often. How many guys were?
Well, he just brought up Eric Escobar, and I mean, I remember Eric Escobar. I don't think many people would the way they brought him in with Vicky Guerrero. I think it was right. I mean, there wasn't they didn't vignette him up. They didn't try to push that character. So I mean, everybody comes in a different way, and
he's a good worker. He's a big dude. Like he wasn't a small dude. Like I want to say he's 6'3", 6'4", easy. You know, a big, solid looking heel. You know, easy guy to get some heat on, like get some heat off of. You know, and get a babyface over because he's beating the crap out of some babyface. You know, and just for whatever reason and. How the cookie crumbles.
Tell us, Sinn, because we know your time's important to you. How can fans get a hold of you, and how can they get some of those figures if they're interested?
Oh, thanks. So I'm easy to reach. Social media, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram is Sinn Bodhi. SINNBODHI. Sinn with two N's, Bodhi like the tree.
There you go.
And before we went live today, Sinn, you said that you've made indie wrestlers figures, so they can contact you directly to ask you for that.
Yeah. So like, when we're talking before we were recording, like saying like, if I just made a figure, like if I made Damian Demento just because I felt like it, I would post it. And then what would happen more times than not would be, a bunch of indie guys or like the wife of somebody or the boyfriend of somebody, or somebody would be like, hey, I want to make this for my boyfriend or my husband or my wife as a surprise. Or it just indie guys just straight out like, my wife is an indie person or my husband's an indie guy. I want to make a figure for Christmas or for birthday or something. Or just guys would just be like, hey, could you make one of myself or whatever? And so, yeah, absolutely. Like that's what I do for the most part. Like for every one I make just for myself, I've got 10 different indie guys or whatever, like that I make. I usually don't post a lot of those because until like they post them, then I'll share it. But like, I don't want to like, what if it's a surprise? I don't want to like stooge off that it's a Christmas gift or a birthday gift or something. Like, look what I made.
Spoiler alert.
Yeah. I don't want to spoil my own stuff,
Your own business. Just spoiling it away.
Yeah. Well, but I'll totally like making them for indie guys. I have a lot of fun doing it and making like if you want something more realistic, you want something more cartoony, you want like usually if you're calling me for an LJN of yourself, you have a certain mindset of like you want it in that style,
Yeah.
So some guys like, hey, somebody that's never set foot in a wrestling ring, hey, could you make me look like a wrestler? Or could you make me in a pair of jeans and a t-shirt? Yeah. You can do whatever you want. Yeah. I could put you in a Road Warrior outfit. I could put you in an astronaut outfit. I could put you with a rubber ducky. I could whatever the heck you want. Just send me a message and I'll take care of you. Well,
spoiler alert, I tell you what, Sinn, you're going to be commissioned now because I'm going after the Delirium action figures. McCallion, I'm sure you sensed this coming.
Right when I saw your eyes go wide for 1,000 emirs, I already knew that.
There you go.
Well, we need
I'll give you the brother rate for sure.
There you go. Okay. And then, of course, as it progresses, then we'll show all our viewers here and we'll show them the finished product of what Sinn Bodhi made for Delirium. I think that'd be a good thing to do right there. Well, Sinn,
if you want to see it in stages, we can absolutely do that. Like, I will send photos like half done if somebody wants to kind of see the progress. Like usually what I'll do is I'll design, like I'll say, hey, give me any pertinent information that you want, like a certain pose or a certain this or that, or, you want to be holding I don't know, a beer bottle or a kendo stick or whatever it is. Just let me know what you want. And then, so I'll design it and then I'll send them like a proof before I 3D print. So if there's any changes or additions or something that they want to do, then they can say, yep, no, you're good to go. Or, hey, could you add this or whatever? I say, okay, and we proof it again. And then they give me the 2 thumbs up. Yep. And then I 3D print them and I custom paint them and I ship them off.
Okay, perfect.
So we can do that if you want. We can do that as well.
No, absolutely. And then you've got the 3D print. So for example, once you've got it locked in of all 3 characters, then if we wanted to reorder again for whatnot for sales, you can do that, right? Boom.
Yeah. And once they're designed, I can make them in like different size. I can make them like Galoob size, like Hasbro size. I can make the little little 2-inch, little 1-inch minis or whatever. Like
That's cool.
once it's designed, that's the cool difference between casting and molding, like a rubber figure.
Yeah.
Like that's the only thing you're going to get. If I made an 8-inch you like this, that's how it is. But if we do it on the 3D, we can make, 1-inch, 2-inch, 3-inch, 4-inch, 5-inch, 8-inch, 10-inch.
Okay.
24-inch, whatever.
Don't go too far. Amir likes life-size replicas, so
Sure.
Amir might try to push his 6-foot over frame and say, "Hey, can we make this happen?" Just make sure you put that brother rate way up there. Just make sure he pays.
I'm a gun for hire. If you're paying, I'm playing. So there you go.
I start seeing it right now. I see, especially when you said you can do the little ones.
He
like
wants
that.
to roll in the carpool lane with a second Amir in the passenger seat. That's what it is. This is my twin
I didn't
right
make the
here.
little ones, like almost like those little green army men's when you're a little kid,
Yeah.
Like you just paint
Mighty
one
Max,
color.
like the Mighty Max. You remember
Hey.
Mighty Max?
Yeah, exactly. But
Yeah,
hey,
the little muscle
seriously,
guys, those little pink muscle guys or whatever.
right?
Yeah. Oh, that's right.
Or you
Yeah.
paint them silver and you make them into keychains, or you do all sorts of
Yeah,
stuff.
that's what I'm thinking. You just put a little keychain on it, right? The kids they
Just
get
have
that
the
little-
delirium trio all
Yeah,
over.
That's it.
Wherever you go,
Yeah.
keep them in the car, have one in the bathroom to ward
Yeah.
off smells. You
Yeah.
can do whatever you need.
There you go.
That's right. And
They're
it's
coming.
not like I'm not I'm not Walmart. I'm not some sweatshop overseas somewhere. Like I'm one guy in a garage.
Right.
So like making these small runs of stuff is like they're not that expensive, but they're not like a cheap little Walmart toy either.
Right.
So
Yeah.
just like to mass produce them is, finding clever ways to kind of do that again, whether it's a rubber mold or whatever. But if it's smaller ones, then I would just say like, don't paint them regular, like paint them silver or paint them, something like that.
Yeah.
Like I may or may not have thrown a wrestler or two across the my little workshop area. I'm like, I screwed up. Fuck. So the tinier it is, the shittier it is to like.
They took a
paint or
bump,
whatever.
man. They took
Yeah.
a bump that was necessary. So
But hey, some of those little ones though, we talk about those imperfections. That's what some people like, those little ones with little imperfection
True,
here.
true.
They become little
Sure.
collectors, oh yeah, I got this one that had I remember they did that with some of the figures where they had a different color pair of tights or something. I forget which
Sure.
ones.
they do the variant, the chase one. It would be
Yeah.
the chase, yeah.
I think it was a Bret Hart where he had a pink heart or a purple. I can't remember what
It was like the black and pink, and then they did the pink and pink or something like that. I know what you're
Yeah.
talking about. Yeah.
Yeah. So, well, anyway, there you
And
go.
too, like, sky's the limit. Like, whether I'm making a wrestler that existed, whether I'm making an indie wrestler, or whether you want some weird acid trip combo. Like, if you want, a green macho man with 3 octopus tentacles on each side of his arms with, I don't know, horns,
Yeah.
I can make that.
I hope someone watches this show and requests that from Sid.
Yeah, yeah.
I hope someone purchases it. I want to see that shared on any one of his social medias once it's done.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, please, anybody who watches this.
Green macho man with tentacles and horns, please purchase that.
Yeah, exactly. Please purchase it. And like I said,
Sky's the limit. Sky's the limit. So.
yeah, you heard it. And then of course, Sinn, you're still coaching at the school in Las Vegas, right? One last thing, you're still coaching there, right?
Yep.
Future Stars of Wrestling.
Yep.
Okay, so he's a coach.
I coach on Tuesdays, and the last few weeks I've been taking Rip Rogers with me. He's been kind of guest coaching, tag teaming with me, and he is the coach of coaches. If people don't know, he was one of my coaches back in the day. And it's easier to list the people he didn't train than the people he did train. From Cena, Orton, Batista, just the list goes on and on and on and on and on.
If you see Rip, say hi to him. Tell him you just did Flex's podcast. He'll know
I will.
who I am. Him and Dylan Bostic. Dylan Bostic was my old tag partner, and they were super tight. When he saw him off to go to Vegas when he just got there, I thought Rip died, and he was all like, "This is the last time I'm seeing Rip." So I hit him up and I said, "Rip, are you dying?" And then he's like, "Hell no." He said, "Who said that?" And I said, "Dylan." And he's like, "No." And Dylan said, "No, it's just the last time I'm ever going to see him. He's leaving Indiana to go to Texas." So
That's it. Yeah, Rip is staying out in Vegas for the
Vegas,
time being with some of his family. So he comes and trains with me every Tuesday, and I'm having time of my life, having the hustler co-coaching by my side. That's pretty darn awesome. So it's really cool.
Very cool.
I coach at FSW on Tuesdays. I fly out to wrestle just about every weekend. I'll do wrestling matches, seminars, make these action figures, tattoos. I'm kind of a jackass of all trades. So whatever's going to do to feed my critters at my funny farm and pay the mortgage, I'm good to go.
Good stuff, man. Good stuff. A good man. Thank you so much, Sinn. That was an absolute pleasure. It was a blessing to have you on the podcast.
Thank you.
You know, it was wonderful. It went in directions that I didn't expect. We got pearls of wisdom. We got action figures. We got coaching lessons.
And hopefully a green macho man with tentacles and horns, you know. So.
Yeah.
Somebody out there in podcast wrestling land, please make that happen. I would enjoy making that for somebody.
All right. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, students rather, it's been an absolute pleasure. Until next week on Masterclass, take care of yourselves. We'll see you next time.